The hazardous state of Block 1 is just one anxiety for the rescue team. Looming over the site are the other two towers, and it's feared that they might come crashing down at any moment. Police officer Zaman Khan makes a decision to have them evacuated immediately.
We thought it is safer to evacuate everybody from the other two buildings.
Occupants of Highland Tower, Block B and Block C, please vacate the said blocks because it is considered unsafe now.
As the rescuers battle to come up with a strategy, distraught relatives begin to gather at the site. The sheer horror of what has taken place is overwhelming.
So a lot of the family members were there and total shock, total disbelief. Just how can this happen to me? Where are my loved ones?
Block 1 resident Dr. P.G. George returns to find his wife and two daughters are missing.
We saw Dr. George and he could hardly walk with people holding him. And in a way that's what really brought home what had happened.
Zarif Effendi, who has been searching desperately for his brother and sister, provides a single piece of good news. His siblings are safe.
They went out luckily, but the sun went over them. But my mate here, by
the biggest relief, you're like, oh my God.
When So Chai Hock, Deputy Director of Malaysia's Fire Service, reaches the disaster site, he has no illusions about the challenge his men now face and the urgency of their task.
In my 30 years of operation, I have never seen such a huge collapse of a building.
The bomber team lacked the specialized equipment needed to deal with a building collapse on this scale. But So Chai Hock orders his men into action.
The fire service was ill-equipped for such a job. We do not have the specialized equipment to cater for such a disaster. But we cannot stand here saying to do nothing. We gave everything. We went in and we tried to take the people out.
So I went up together with some firemen using the ladder. And then we were looking around. I told the man, careful, but look around just in case there are survivors.
Almost at once, firefighter Mahendran Muniandi hears the sound that they all desperately hope to hear. A human cry for help.
Jadi bila naik, saya pergi ke dalam, saya jerit. Halo, halo kan? Kalau ada siapa-siapa kan? Dan saya dengar bunyi.
Mahendran finally tracks down the sound to the remains of the 6th floor.
Bila kita sampai ke suara itu, kita nampak ada satu seorang mangsa dah ditimbus dengan dinding, menutupi separuh badan dia lah. Kita dapati nak mengangkat tembok itu satu masalah. Dia pun tolak.
The trapped woman is a Japanese national called Shizui Nakajima. She has been terribly injured.
Badan dia kebiru-biruan. Lepas itu kita tunggu bantuan sampai di atas stretcher. Kita tunggu di bawah lebih kurang setengah jam lah.
As the rescuers struggle to free the stricken Shizui, they hear a second cry, but it's hard to locate where the sound is coming from.
We heard tolong like that, but we were looking around, it's all rubble and all that.
Then, one of the rescue team spots a stick being poked through the rubble. As they begin digging, a heart-rending sight confronts the rescuers.
I was surprised. There was this baby and the mother. So we took the baby out, and I was so surprised that there was no injuries on the baby.
The baby, Nur Hamida, just 16 months old, is soon safe in the hands of her rescuers, and apparently unfazed by her astonishing escape. Meanwhile, the bombermen have at last freed the injured Japanese woman Shizui. A crane has reached the site and she is delicately lifted to safety. minutes later, the mother of the rescued baby is at last winched to freedom. She is an Indonesian maid called Umi Rashida, who had been trapped inside an apartment when the building collapsed. For the rescue teams and waiting relatives, the deliverance of these 3 survivors is electrifying.
We were quite happy at that time, thinking that the rest could be found.
But the rescuers now face a problem. No one can account for how many people were in Block 1 when it collapsed.
Obviously the numbers, it was a total unknown. It could have been anything from 150 down to 0. Obviously people were going to be there because it was still a lunchtime on a Saturday. So, but we didn't know how many. We just really didn't initially.
And an even more urgent question is, are any still alive? It's day 1 of the Highland Towers rescue. Hordes of television crews and journalists have staked out the site, and the news of the catastrophe is fast rippling out across Kuala Lumpur. People who have relatives and friends in Highland Towers are horrified to find out that they may have loved ones trapped in the wreckage.
So we was watching the Hindi movie, then got breaking news. They say the condominium collapsed. My leg start shaking and all that, you know.
Rahat's daughter Anna, her British son-in-law Robin, and her grandson were all in Block 1 at the time it collapsed.
In front of the TV waiting, listening news, because a Japanese lady was safe and one Indonesian lady and her daughter was safe. So we was hoping maybe she also was safe.
Just hoping and praying that she survived this, you know. I mean, it could be a miracle somewhere that she could be alive.
For those watching and waiting, this stirring news of 3 people rescued brings a surge of hope. Dr. Rizwan Bakar is waiting to hear about his sister Rosina and her husband Carlos Musa.
My feeling at that time, of course, was that of hope. Hope that the people who were in the building at that point in time were somehow still alive.
Dr. Rizwan volunteers as a rescuer, and he joins the many other civilians who offer to help the bomber men. Another volunteer, Mike Rickard, a safety engineer, is shocked by what he finds.
So just try and get hold of a tractor.
I just went up and said, can I help in some way? And there didn't seem to be any coordinated activities. Nobody seemed to be taking charge. It's what I call fighting fires. 1 minute they're saying, oh, there's some problem here, everybody rushes there, there's a problem over there, everybody rushes there. It was obviously disorganized, totally and absolutely disorganized.
Hours after the collapse, much still needs improvising. The rescue teams depend heavily on the generosity of local individuals and companies who donate vital equipment.
They responded very generously, especially the business community. They sent in their heavy trucks together with the operators.
We have to open our mouth for help, it'll come.
Because the ruins of Block 1 remain so unstable, there is one simple piece of kit that is urgently needed on site.
We need to have acrojacks, which are these basically a form of scaffolding which allows separation of concrete structures.
With hundreds of acrojacks in place, the teams can enter deeper into the ruins without fear of further collapse.
We went in between those collapsed walls and carefully we were removing stones and all this, trying to get access into the building.
To remove the rubble, initially there was only one way, and that was picking rocks up and passing down the line. And we didn't have the luxury of time. We were just going in and searching.
In the evening of the first day, Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir arrives at the disaster site. Highland Towers is now an international news story, and Dr. Mahathir calls for help from around the world. The Prime Minister also wants answers. How many people are still trapped inside the building, and why did it collapse? As it happens, an engineer from the Public Works Department has already arrived on site to find answers.
My first question that came to my mind was, how did the building which stood over the last 10, 12 years could have failed now?
The rescue operation will destroy vital clues, so Dr. Asbi must work fast.
We need to have some kind of photographic evidence, because in the search and rescue, when you try to move things from the rubble, you probably destroy some evidence.
Dr. Asbi makes an alarming discovery. He can hear water flowing down the slope towards the rescue site, which he fears might trigger another deadly landslide. So he takes immediate steps to stem the flow.
We had to do all that was required of the public works to ensure the safety at that time of the search and rescue, to prevent further movement of the slope behind the building.
It's just after midnight, the start of day 2 of the rescue. The rescuers receive dispiriting news. Shizui Nakajima, the Japanese woman rescued the day before, has died from her injuries in hospital. The news is a bitter blow. A mass of personal belongings has been removed from the ruins of